Hello, and welcome back to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and once again, we are managing the score manager. We're also pulverizing our percussion again today. We're looking at the Percussion Layout editor, which is where a lot of the magic happens. And if you remember my analogy, the percussion layouts are basically the third layer of the cake. And essentially what the layouts do is it tells Finale which instruments or which percussion sounds go on which lines of the staffs and with which note heads. So it's a really critical piece of the whole picture of percussion in Finale. So I'm excited to do this because this is important. So we're going to go into the score manager. And we're going to look at my cymbal line here. And again, with the timpani, this is pitch percussion, so you won't get the notation style that you need. You need the cymbals, which is non-pitched, and you get notation style percussion, and you have available to you the settings, which will pull up the percussion layout selection dialog box. Now, all of the percussion layouts listed here are available in the default document in Finale 26. So you will see all of these layouts just like this. And this window works like a lot of other windows in Finale. We have an edit button, which will get us to the percussion layout designer for whichever layout we have selected. And this percussion layout designer is exactly what I'm going to show you about in this video. But before I do that, we have some other options here. We can duplicate a layout, which will just copy the one you have selected, and then you can edit that from there. You can delete any layout. You can use the move down and move up buttons to change the order of the layouts within this list. And of course, we have the create button, which will create a blank layout that you can start from scratch with. Now, a couple things to know about what's going on with how Finale deals with the layouts and how they relate to the score manager itself. A lot of times when you add instruments in Finale, so I'm just going to do this, I'm going to go to percussion and I'm going to add a bell tree. A lot of times when you do that, Finale will actually add a layout for that particular instrument. Now you can see that there's a bell tree percussion layout here, which there wasn't one before, I can assure you of that. And it will also be selected. Sometimes when you add percussion in Finale, I'm going to go to the drums now, and we're going to add this African log drum. And I'll just show you what the percussion layout selection dialog box looks like now. It will select a layout that already exists, and this basic African percussion layout has already been in the list. However, it also added a new layout called African log drum, which is a dedicated layout that just has this one African log drum instrument in it. Now, why sometimes Finale will add it and choose it, and then other times it will add it and not choose it, is a little bit of a mystery to me. I don't quite know the mechanics of that, but suffice it to say, particularly when you're dealing with less common instruments, it's worth it to come into this layout selection dialog box to see which layout it has selected for you. And if it added one but didn't select it, sometimes it's worth taking a look at that and seeing if that's worth using. And a lot of times it's worth just actually creating your own because, again, some of these files are not 100% complete, in my opinion. So sometimes it's worth just creating your own layouts. So let's actually go up here and look at my bell tree for a second. We're going to go into settings and we're going to see that we have this bell tree percussion layout, and we're going to press the edit button to get to the percussion layout designer. Now this is what we're mainly talking about today. And of course with these layouts you can rename them here whatever you want. We'll just leave that as is for now, bell tree. And I'm going to start with the stuff that's on the upper right-hand corner because this is sort of important basic information to know about this. It's going to tell you what staff you're dealing with, in this case the bell tree staff. It's going to tell you what current percussion MIDI map is being used. Now in this case it's using the Jazz Fusion drum kit, which is strange. But I'm going to explain that in a minute. And this percussion MIDI map will most often or almost always match the sound patch that's selected for that staff. And you can see that my bell tree in the score manager is using the Garritan device. It's using the Fusion drum kit. And again, that's a strange choice, and I'll explain why in a second. But what's important about this is that when you have this percussion MIDI map selected here, Finale gives you this thing about only viewing note types in, and then it will list the percussion MIDI map here, Jazz Fusion drum kit. This is important because when you start adding note note types over in this left-hand column, with this option checked, you will only ever see note types that are actually available within the Jazz Fusion Drum Kit MIDI map and actually available in the Jazz Fusion Kit sound in this case. If I were to select a different sound from the sound over here, and I can do that real quick. Let's find percussion, basic orchestral percussion. Now when I go into that, choose Beltry for me again. Now when I go into this layout designer, you can see that now it's choosing the basic orchestral percussion MIDI map. So this is basically matching the MIDI map that's being used for that particular sound. And again, with this checked, it's only giving me the sounds that are available within the basic orchestral percussion. Now, the Beltry is not a sound that's available in the basic orchestral percussion within the Garritan device. So that's why it is italicized. If I uncheck this option, you'll see it not be italicized anymore. And when I select this menu here, there's a whole lot more instruments and all of these sub categories and like 1 million instruments for each subcategory within category. This is literally every single percussion instrument that Finale defines within the program. And there's a ton of them. And you can see that auxiliary is checked and Beltry is checked. So the Beltry is an instrument that exists in Finale. It's just that it's not an instrument that exists in many of the patches that are available in Finale, if that makes sense. In this case, when you check this option, it gets italicized. That's telling you that it's not available in the basic orchestral percussion MIDI map, as well as the basic orchestral sound within the Garritan instruments. Now, the Beltry, I picked this instrument specifically. The Beltry is available in the SmartMusic SoftSynth device within the orchestral sound patch here. And now, when we go and choose that Beltry percussion layout one more time, we can see that Beltry is not italicized, and we'll see that auxiliary is checked and Beltry is checked. This is telling us that now that Beltry sound is available with this particular patch in the SmartMusic SoftSynth. Got it? Does that make sense? Again, you can uncheck this and literally add any instrument that you care to add to this column, and that will add it to the staff, and all is well and good. But only the ones that are available within the MIDI map and the sound are going to be heard on playback. If you don't care about playback, uncheck this, add as many instruments as you want to your heart's delight. If you need playback, just make sure this is checked so that you'll know that the instruments that you're adding are going to be able to be heard. Now, it's a little bit tricky because there's no indication as to what these sounds that you're adding, whether they're not available in the device. Now, Finale, if you have it set up in a certain way, is going to prioritize a specific device. And in my case, I have Garritan instruments prioritized. So whenever I add an instrument, it's going to use the Garritan instrument as the default device. So it's not ever going to switch to SmartMusic SoftSynth for my Beltry automatically. It's going to be set up to Garritan, which again is a problem because the Beltry doesn't exist in Garritan. Now, how would you know which instruments exist in which devices and which sound patches? That's a really good question, and the best answer I can give you is to check out these 3 pages in the Finale manual, which I will put links to in the description. These are the Garritan instrument device, and these are all the patches available. And if you click the triangle, you'll see all of the options available for the basic orchestral percussion. And the Beltry does not exist here. The Beltry does not exist for the Jazz Fusion kit. I can assure you the Beltry does not exist for any of these patches in Garritan. It does, however, exist in the SmartMusic SoftSynth in either the general MIDI or the orchestral percussion. All the way towards the bottom, there is your Beltry. How would you know this off the bat? You really wouldn't. You'd have to come here and double check. So suffice it to say, if you add an instrument and you don't get a sound, it might be in a different instrument within the device. It might be in a different device altogether. All right, so with all of that said, let's go back to my cymbals here, and we're going to go back to the percussion layout selection. And it's got the basic orchestral percussion set up for me, which is fine. If we choose the edit button, we'll be able to see all of the instruments that exist in this particular percussion layout. And you can see that there's a lot of snare drums, there's some bass drums, there's plenty of cymbals, which is what we want, but there's also gongs and triangles and everything. Now, this is fine, you can use this. However, when you start adding notes in the score, you're going to have to kind of sort through all of these extra instruments. So sometimes it's not ideal if you just have a single line that's just for cymbals or something. Sometimes it's not ideal to actually have all of these things available because you'll be wading through a lot when you're adding notes. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new percussion layout, and I'm going to call this new cymbals layout. And we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to add the cymbals. Now you notice that note type is not, there's nothing that you can select over here. That's because I haven't added anything to this list yet. We actually have to use this button here. We can always press the add all. And what this will do is we'll add every single instrument that's available in the basic orchestral percussion all at once, which can be handy, but in this case is not what I want to do at all. I just want to add a few instruments. So I'm actually going to press the plus button. And now you can see I have an item available here in the list. And with that selected, now I have the availability of selecting a note type. And again, with this option unchecked, you can select anything. And again, only some of them will be sounding. So best to check this and then limit yourself to the sounds that are available in this particular percussion MIDI map. So we're going to add a crash cymbal here. I can add another one. Let's add a suspended cymbal roll. We can add another one, and let's add a solo crash cymbal. There we go. And I can keep going. I can add as many as I need. I'm just going to add these three. Again, for me, only add the ones that you think you're going to use, because again, when you start adding notes in the staff, sometimes having less is easier to navigate. So in this case, I'm just going to have these three instruments. And I'm just going to click OK so that we make sure that our new layout is now there. And now we get to the part of the layout designer that's sort of the meat and potatoes of this, which is the staff position and the note head section here. So the staff position is pretty self-explanatory, and they give you a nifty handle here so that you can actually just drag the note heads to a certain staff space or line wherever you want it. You can put this as high or as low as you need to. So in this case, I'm going to put this crash cymbal on the top here, and you can see that it actually gives it a value. So 11. You could also just type in here, if I put 10, it'll put it one step lower. Just as easy to drag it. And we can do that with the suspended cymbal roll. Let's actually put that on the A above the staff. And the crash cymbals crash. Why don't we put that, I don't know, on the E? Why not? So we have the G, the A, and the E. And again, you can put these wherever you want. All right, so that's really easy to deal with. Each note type that's selected can have its own staff position. Of course, they can share a staff position too. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's always a possibility. And then the lower section here is actually where you're going to select the note heads for these instruments. Again, by default, you're going to get normal note heads for closed, half, whole, and double whole notes, but we can change that by just pressing the select button for the closed note head. And when you do that, you get the character selection dialog box, or the symbol selection dialog box, for the Maestro percussion font set, which is the default font set for percussion instruments in the default file. Just zoom this in a little bit so we can see a little better. And in this Maestro percussion set, there's some extra note heads that are useful for percussion, so that's why they give it to us, including some X note heads, if I can find them. There they are. There's actually 3 of them in the Maestro percussion font set. There's this one, which is a little bit thicker, and this one. And if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, this is helpful. But it'll give you the letter that you can type to get this particular character. So that's Z, Y, and that's X. So let's just choose Y. Why not? And press select. And now you'll see that the closed note heads, which is again is going to be used for quarters, eighths, sixteenths, etc., is going to use that X note head. For the half note head, we're going to try and find the open X note head, which is these guys here. And there's 3 of them that kind of match those other X's, right? And they happen to be the capital letter versions of it. So X, Y, Z, capital Z. Oops, so there it is. So let's choose the capital Y, right? And I say this because now that you know that it's Y and capital Y for this particular one, it's just easy enough to choose capital Y or type capital Y here and get the same note heads. They don't really delineate the fonts too much between the half hole and double hole note heads for percussion. I can understand why. It's, once you get to, why would you ever write a double hole note head for a percussion instrument? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's really just the open and closed note heads. Why, and why. All right, and then we could choose even different note heads for the suspended symbol. Let's say we want to choose that other X variation, which is actually the Z. We can choose that, and again, I know that the capital Z will give me the matching closed or open note head. So now we have that one, and you know what? We can do something different for the crash cymbals here. We could choose even a different type of note head. And again, this Maestro percussion set has a whole bunch of different shapes too. So I don't know, let's choose something like the diamond here. And I see that that's actually 3. And for the open half note head, there should be a matching open diamond, which is, here it is. And that's the # or the hashtag. And so I actually know I can just type that in, which is Shift 3. So 3 and Shift 3 for the diamond. And again, there's other ones here if you want. We have the square, the triangle, the half moon, this other triangle, the rectangle, this whatever that is, these other triangles. So there's a bunch of different things that you can choose from, and they all have their open note head versions of it, all right? So that's done. So basically I have 3 symbols on different lines in the score, or different lines on the staff using different note heads. So this is how you set this up. Again, this is where the magic happens. This is entirely customizable. So yeah. One other thing I should mention is that we do have these arrows over here. This just helps order the instruments. So my suspended cymbal just goes up, just in case you want to keep track of the order. It has absolutely no effect on anything, just what you're viewing in this list. And then we click OK, and we click Select. And so now I've got that new symbols layout selected for my symbols. And now when I go into the score, if I were to go into simple entry here, just to enter some notes, you'll see that as I scroll up and down, I'm only going to have those 3 notes available. So just the suspended cymbal roll, crash cymbal, and the crash cymbals crash. Right, so we can add these as we need to. There's a suspended roll, and we can do the open note heads too if you want to see those. Just like that. All right, and the interesting thing is that even after you have these notes in the staff, we can edit this layout. We can do anything we want to these notes, including, if we wanted to move that pitch to the middle line, we could change the note heads. Whatever we want to do, we make the change, and it will be reflected in the score as well. So now that crash cymbal has been put on the middle line as well. Now, the other thing to realize is that if you happen to be using a one-line staff, so I'm going to switch to one-line staff here, it is important to know where your pitches are going, because now putting these pitches all the way up here doesn't make a lot of sense. This one works. That's obviously how you want to do it. So if you are using a one-line staff, you definitely have to make sure that your layout designer is sort of accommodating that. So this crash cymbal in the middle line is great. Maybe this one we could put on the space above the middle line. This one we could put on the space below the middle line, and that should be fine set up like that. And that makes a little bit more sense. Now, another thing I want to mention about fonts is that I said that the Maestro percussion font is set up by default. And if I go into the document options, check out fonts, in the notation section, there's notation options for the note heads. This is going to be for your normal staffs, like your timpani staff, and then percussion note heads, which is going to be used on any staff that uses the percussion notation style. We can always change this font. What's important to realize is that the Maestro font, the Jazz font, and the Broadway Copyist font, those 3 fonts will pretty much be interchangeable in terms of where the X note heads are and the other shaped note heads are. So if I were to just find if I can find it, the Broadway, where are you? Broadway Copyist Percussion font. If I were to use this one instead of Maestro Percussion, you'll see that you'll still get the X note heads and the diamonds and everything. They'll be just a little bit different than the Maestro version. If I undo, you'll see the Maestro version come back. Again, the Maestro, the Jazz, and the Broadway copyist fonts are all interchangeable. The other fonts that are available in Finale, Engraver, and Petrucci also have, you can also use for percussion. However, they don't interchange as easily. In fact, I'll just indicate this really quickly if I can. Engraver, font set, click OK. And you'll notice that something weird happens. It uses different characters. The reason for this, and I'll just show you this real quick, is that the character sets that are available, or the symbols that are available for the Engraver font, are in sort of different places in a lot of cases. So some of those specialized X note heads are not the X note heads that you would want to see here. So if you are using Engraver, you do have to make sure that these percussion layouts are going to have the correct symbol selected for the X note heads. Otherwise, you're going to get something that looks a little bit bizarre like that. Oops. Let's undo that, get back to Maestro. The other thing about this is that you could theoretically, if you want to, in your staff attributes for any given staff, have an independent notehead font. So we could, if we really wanted to, we could actually change the noteheads to jazz percussion for the symbols here. This will always be weird because it's just the noteheads that are in jazz font, so like the time signatures and all the other elements won't be in jazz font, but that's a possibility. And of course, when we do something with the staff attributes, we always have the option to do it as a staff style too, so we could create a new staff style with an independent element with an independent notehead. So again, if you really want to get crazy, you can change the notehead font for just 2 or 3 measures of a percussion staff by doing it that way. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to say, I'm going to go into this percussion layout selection dialog box. All of these percussion layouts are library items. This is a library of percussion layouts. And as we know in Finale, libraries get attached to their files. So this list of library percussion layout items exist only for this particular file. If I were to create a new default document, I wouldn't get these extra 3 percussion layouts because these are, again, specially designed for this file. So, just be careful if you start creating these layouts. These are not going to follow you from file to file. However, because it is a library item, we can actually save the library, and there is an option in the Save Library here for percussion layouts. So if I were to click OK, it would create a new file with my percussion layouts. And then when I load that percussion layout library file into my next file, it will add those extra percussion layouts. If the percussion layouts match exactly, precisely, note for note, notehead for notehead, between the library and the new file, it won't copy over. So you won't get a second list with all those second long list with all those percussion layouts. You only get the unique ones. So if I were to do this and then load it into a default file, the only thing that would get loaded is those 3 new percussion layouts that I added. So it is entirely possible to move the layouts between files, but this is how you'd have to do it. Go to Save Library, and then in the new file, go into Load Library, and then find that library file and load it into your next file. All right, so yeah, that is a lot, but this is important stuff with the percussion layouts. It gets critically important, I think, with a drum set. As soon as you start adding, sounds and instruments to your drum set, I'll just show you a little bit, what the drum set layout looks like here. There's all kinds of things: splash, crash cymbals, hi-hats. All kinds of things, and you can customize this to death. However you want to see the ride cymbal on which line staff, you can absolutely customize this. And then you can start throwing in other instruments that may be available within the Jazz Fusion drum kit in this case. There's other auxiliary instruments that you can add, like vibra slaps and shakers and all that stuff. So you can add all of that to your drum set percussion layout. So, the sky's the limit with this layout designer. It's really kind of neat. And then, yeah, that's it. The next video I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about a little bit of an advanced look at the Percussion Layout Designer, because there is a way, I keep mentioning that when you add instruments to the Percussion Layout Designer, you're only going to be able to hear the instruments that exist within the percussion MIDI map and sound set that's set for this particular instrument. But there is actually a way to set up layers to have different sounds, in which case we can use more than what's available in the one percussion MIDI map and get them to play back. So I'm going to actually demonstrate that in the next video as well, which is kind of cool. You can get like a drum set with the djembe sound added to it if you really want to, because the djembe exists in a different sound set. So I'll show you that next. All right. So yeah, I think that covers it. This is getting to be a little bit of a long video, but an important one in my opinion. So hopefully this has all helped. All right, once again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you soon on the next video.